This video covers sections 2 through 9 of Hansen and Quinn's Greek, an intensive course, and will cover how to pronounce Attic Greek along with some other important things as we get started. You will find the same information in Hansen and Quinn on pages 2 through 6. First, I need to tell you that the way Hansen and Quinn teaches you to pronounce Ancient Greek and the way I'm accustomed to pronouncing Ancient Greek and will teach you too comes to us as an inheritance from the scholar Erasmus. And it is not the only tradition of pronunciation of Ancient Greek. Some people pronounce things the way that modern Greek is pronounced. Some people try to recreate what was likely the pitch accent of Ancient Greek. We won't do that here, but I will often stop to talk about it. So let's get started with the letters. I'm going to show you how to write each letter rather slowly and then give you the pronunciation. So there's alpha, and alpha we're going to pronounce when it's short as the A in drama. So brief but an ah sound. When it is long, it is a longer sound that's the same, like the ah in father. Now, in Greek in the wild, editors don't usually provide long marks, but in Hansen and Quinn, as you get to know your vocabulary and have a sense of the different vowels, you will get the benefit of long marks to tell the difference between the two. The second letter is beta. Oh, that's really slow. The uppercase looks just like a B, and the lowercase is a little bit more curvy than a B. And it is going to be pronounced just like the B in bit. So pretty familiar, shouldn't be a problem. And of course, alpha and beta are the reasons that we call our order of letters the alphabet. Now we'll go on to the third letter, which is gamma. Uppercase looks a little bit like an F with one of its bars missing, and the lowercase gamma looks a little bit like a fish swimming down. And it is always pronounced as the hard G in get. There's a little bit of an exception to that we'll get to a few screens from now. The fourth letter is delta, which you may have used in math when that symbol means change. In Greek, we're going to pronounce it just like the D in den. The fifth letter is epsilon, which looks just like an E in the capital and like a stylized E in the lowercase. And it is always a short E, as in get. Sometimes you'll see me write it, and maybe other people too, in this way. But it never has the joined up top the way lowercase e's do in, say, the E in get right there. The sixth letter is zeta. And I think you could hear me give that Z sound a little bit more of a D behind it, like the Z in gadzooks. Sometimes you'll catch me accidentally writing my lowercase zeta this way, which is a habit I got from modern Greek handwriting, and I think you won't have too much problem interpreting it. So if we go on, the seventh letter is eta. The uppercase looks like an H, and the lowercase looks like an N with too much second leg. But this is actually a vowel, and it is pronounced like the A in wait. So you will get used to that as a vowel. Then we have theta, which looks the same pretty much, both uppercase and lowercase. And as you can hear, I'm going to pronounce it as the TH in thought. If we go on, we get iota, little bitty letter, which is why people talk about not wanting an iota of something. That means a very small amount. Uppercase looks just like our I, and lowercase looks like an I without the dot on top. Here, we're going to pronounce it when it's short as the I in bit. But iota can also be long, and when it's long, we're going to pronounce it like the E in meat. Next we get kappa. Now the font they chose for Hansen and Quinn makes it a little hard to see kappas that look like this. They look a little bit like curvy tiny X's in Hansen and Quinn. Be careful of that because that's not actually the shape. Try to do a little K like as I did here. And but the easy thing is that you pronounce it just like the K in kit. Then we get lambda. Uppercase looks like an A missing its bar, and you can see the little sort of lean-to of lowercase, and it sounds just like the L in lit. We get mu. Uppercase looks like our M, lowercase a little bit different, and that first leg does go below the line, but we pronounce it just like the M in meat. Okay, let's go to the second half of the alphabet. And here is nu. Uppercase looks just like our uppercase N. Lowercase, though, looks like a V, and you're going to have to get used to seeing that as an N sound, and that's exactly what it is, an N sound as in neat. After nu comes xi, which looks like that. So pretty fun capital to write with those 3 bars. Lowercase, if you look really hard, you can sort of see those 3 bars cursived up. The pronunciation is like the X in taxi. X, x, a K sound and an S sound. And the only thing that's hard about that is that sometimes you're going to have that at the beginnings of words, and English speakers aren't used to saying that sound at the beginnings of words. So I recommend trying to learn to write your lowercase x's the way you can see right there, but I warn you that my handwriting is usually going to have a xi that looks like this. The next letter is Omicron, one of Greek's O's, and it is always a short sound, and we're going to pronounce it as the aw in bought. So Omicron is going to be aw as in bought. Then we get pi, or properly, I suppose, P, but at least it's a symbol, a letter that you'll recognize from all the work you've done in math, and it is pronounced as the P in pen. Whoops, there you can see the next letter, which is rho. Let me show it to you more slowly. Rho, unfortunately, it's a beautiful letter, but unfortunately it looks like what English speakers think of as a P. It's not. That shape now needs to start to indicate to you an R sound, as in the R in drama. And you can roll it just a little. It's not exaggerated, but give it a little bit more body than English R usually gets. And you can see that the lowercase one is all nice and curvy. The next letter is sigma. And so there you see a capital sigma. Lowercase sigma has 2 forms. One is the one you see here, and that is the form for the beginning of a word or the middle of a word. When sigma appears at the end of a word, it looks a little bit more like our S, except that its tail descends below the line. And we pronounce it the way we pronounce our S, as in set. Next, we're going to get tau, which is a T sound as in 10, and as you can see, it looks just like a T. Uppercase and lowercase is just sort of a little curvier version. Next we have upsilon. Uppercase upsilon looks like a Y, and in fact is the reason that a French Y is called an Y, because it is a Greek E sound, because this vowel ended up having an E sound. But not the way we're going to pronounce it. The way we're going to pronounce it is like a U. It's also got a short and a long form. The short upsilon we're going to pronounce as the in put. And when it is long, we're going to pronounce it as the U in boot. Again, Most of the time when you're reading a real Greek text, there aren't long marks, but Hansen and Quinn is nice and puts them in so that you can see the difference. After upsilon, we have phi, and it's going to be pronounced for us in the Erasmian tradition as the F in fit. Then we'll go on to chi. The lowercase chi does go below the line, descends below the line, and it has that famously tricky sound to pronounce the ch in loch. Next, we'll get psi, which is just a PS sound together, and so it's like the PS in upset. And again, sort of like xi, it's not really that hard to say, except Greek has it at the beginning of words sometimes, and that's a bit of a challenge for English speakers. Finally, we have omega. And omega is Greek's long O, and so it's always pronounced that way, as in total. And that's the whole alphabet, but of course, that's not all that we have to learn. Now, you may have noticed, not that you were keeping track, that one sound that we didn't do was an H sound. We had a letter that looked like H, but it was pronounced like A. Attic Greek didn't have a separate letter for the H sound, the H sound. Instead, that H sound, like at the beginning of hand, is represented, it's called a rough breathing is what we get instead of an actual letter, and it looks like this, a curved mark that's open to the right, and it goes over the letter that the H sound precedes. So I would pronounce this omicron with a rough breathing over it as ha. Similarly, rough breathing over alpha, I would pronounce ha. And a rough breathing over an eta, say, would be hey. And the same over any other vowels. Any vowel at the beginning of a word requires a breathing, and if it is a rough breathing, it has an H sound there. So the word you see before you is hexagonon, which is where we get the word hexagon. And that H sound, which we spell with a separate letter in English, is simply the rough breathing here. If you need to put a rough breathing and that sound before an uppercase vowel, you put the breathing a little bit to the left of the actual letter, as you can see here in the Greek for Helen, which is Helene. Greek also always tells you if there's no sound before the vowel at the beginning of a word. It's as if we had a mark before and to tell us that it's definitely and instead of hand. That mark is called a smooth breathing, and it's a curve in the other direction. And it again goes over the vowel. So that is ah, and a. And again, you need a breathing, whether it's rough or smooth, every time a vowel starts a word. So this word is oligarchia. And you can see that even though I don't pronounce any separate sound, I have to indicate that with a smooth breathing over the omicron there to give you the Greek word for oligarchy. And just as with rough breathings, if you need to put a smooth breathing with a capitalized vowel at the beginning of a word, it goes just a little bit before it. So this is electra, which is how you spell the Greek name Electra. All right, let's go on. Oh, one other place where rough breathings appear always at the beginning of a word is if a word starts with rho, it actually has a rough breathing on it. And so there you see that it is there over a rho by itself, and it would be that way on a word that's any word that starts with rho. So here is rhetorike, which is the Greek for rhetoric, which now I hope starts to show you why you have to remember to put an H in after the R when you spell rhetoric. This isn't true for rows in the middle of a word or at the end of a word, like that row right up there in Electra. Only rows at the beginning of a word. Now let's talk just a little bit about the length of vowels. I've talked a little bit about it as I gave you the alphabet, but Greek classifies every vowel as either long or short. So you've seen alpha with a long mark, and then alpha without one, and the one with a long mark is long, and the one without one is short. Kind of obvious. You've seen eta, and that's always long, and epsilon is sort of its mate, and it's always short. Then we have iota, long and short, omega, which is the long version of Greek's O, and omicron, which is the always short version, and then upsilon, which can be either one. I've marked there epsilon and omicron because you can count on them always to be short. And here is marked eta and omega because you can count on them always to be long. And the length of vowels is going to come into play really soon as we learn more of the things you need to know to sort out Greek. Next, let's look at diphthongs. Greek also combines some vowels, and that's all a diphthong means. It's when two vowels are pronounced together to make one different vowel sound. So, alpha combines with iota to give the I sound from isle. Epsilon combines with iota to give the A sound as in wait. Omicron iota gives the oi sound as in soil, and you saw pop up there already upsilon and iota kind of gives a unusual sound. It's as if you went e really fast, and if you do that enough, you'll find that the sound that comes out starts to be wi as in wit. Next, alpha and upsilon can combine, and that sound is the ow as in flower. Epsilon and upsilon often combine, and here I'm asking you to be very careful to pronounce it as an epsilon and upsilon smushed together. Eu is how we will pronounce it. Many, many words from Greek have come into English with the epsilon and upsilon at the beginning, and English tends to pronounce that as you, but the Greeks did not. So really, really try hard to go eu. We'll also get eta and upsilon. Similarly, eu is how we will pronounce that. Omicron and upsilon, though, is a little bit easier because it's simply like the O and the U in soup. Now, already I need to tell you something that elaborates on a rule that we learned just the previous screen, and that is I told you that vowels at the beginning of a word always have to have a breathing. It can be smooth or it can be rough. Well, a diphthong is a vowel sound at the beginning of a word, and so it always needs a breathing. But when you put a breathing on a Greek word that starts with a diphthong, that mark, that breathing, always goes over the second letter. And so to write correctly, eirene, which is the Greek word for peace, we're going to put the smooth breathing over the iota, over the second letter. Now we have to look into some other combinations of letters that make sounds unlike just the two letters separately. So gamma in combination with certain other letters makes a pretty familiar but interesting sound. So gamma and gamma together makes the ng sound as in anger. Gamma can also combine with kappa to make the nk sound in banker, or with xi to make the nks sound in sphinx, and finally to combine with he to make the nk sound in lunkhead. Now, here are a few other important things, not necessarily about pronunciation. There is another mark that you're going to have to learn as part of spelling, and that's the iota subscript. Alpha, long alpha, eta, and omicron can each take what's called an iota subscript. It's part of the spelling. You'll need to learn it, but it isn't going to make the vowel be pronounced any differently. So here I would still say a, and o. If a word that has an iota subscript is capitalized in the vowel that has that iota subscript, then the iota becomes an iota adscript and gets written after the vowel. So here we have ode and ode, pronounced the same, but you can see that when the omega becomes a capital, the iota goes after it. So that is iota subscript and iota adscript. And now you can see what we're dealing with next is the classification of consonants. This is going to make some things really easy later on, but right now I think it's probably just for interest. Greek's consonants can be classified in several different ways. To start with, by which part of the mouth you say them in. So that's going to be the jargon that we're going to use. And then we're going to have the consonants that are all kind of related and that can be grouped under different pieces of jargon. So palatals are letters that you pronounce using your tongue against the palate, the upper palate of your mouth. And those are going to be kappa, gamma, chi, and xi. And if you try saying those sounds, ka, ga, ki, xi, you can feel that your tongue is pushed up against the back of your palate. The next category are labials, and that's from a Latin word that means lip. And those letters, p, beta, phi, and psi, are all formed by using your lips. Try them. P, b, f, and psi all demand that you use your lips to make the sounds. Then there are the dentals. It shouldn't surprise you that that word is about teeth. And these ones all require us to use our teeth to form the sounds. So this is tau, delta, theta, and sigma. T, d, th, and s. All are tongue and teeth sounds. Now, I've grouped them horizontally as far as the part of the mouth. I've grouped them vertically to show you that there's some relationship between each of these qualities. Kappa, pi, and tau all are simple sounds, as small in effort as possible. Ka, pa, ta. And they are voiceless. There's less power coming to those sounds from the throat, and most of it's up in the head. Add to those a little bit more work coming from the voice, and you get the voiced letters, g, b, and da. You can hear how there's more going on in the larynx, more going on in the voice box, supporting the sound that you're making in your mouth and your head. This next group are aspirated. So here I will tell you a little bit about the ways that other people pronounce ancient Greek. And strictly speaking, chi is an aspirated kappa for the ancients. So it probably was ka with a little bit of a breath of air behind it, aspiration. Same with phi, pa with more of a breath of air behind it. And same with theta, tau, ta, with more air behind it. So ta instead of ta. But as I'm teaching you, we are simply going to go with ch, fa, and tha. But the fact that those are the three aspirated consonants will be useful information later on. Finally, this next group of consonants are the ones that are sigmified. That is to say, all of them are the simple sound, the simple palatal, the simple labial, and the simple dental with a sigma attached. So, x, ps, and then it isn't really a t, it's simply the sigma. Greek doesn't have a separate t letter. But it still, sigma falls in that spot in this little graph of classification of consonants. Now, next you can see that we're going to be working on punctuation. Just a little bit. Really, it's pretty simple. Period in English is the same as a period in Greek. Greek's comma is the same as English's comma. Next, we get what we call a raised dot. And that raised dot, which is placed exactly as it sounds, sort of as the upper dot in a colon or a semicolon, can actually represent either an English colon or semicolon. But that's the placement of that dot, and it can serve both purposes. And then the one that's maybe the strangest is that what looks like a semicolon in Greek is an English question mark. So you'll have to get used to that. Greek capitalizes proper names and sometimes the beginnings of quotation marks, but it doesn't use capitals at the beginnings of sentences, and it mostly doesn't use quotation marks. Some editors will use them nevertheless because of the modern conventions. And really, that is what you need to know from that section, pronouncing ancient Greek and other goodies that will get you started with your Greek work.